Addressing the wage gap alone can bring 2 million Black Americans into the middle class for the first time. 2 million. Yes, 2 million Black Americans have come out of limited opportunities, poor access to healthcare, and limited access to wealth, and they can move into the middle class, giving them more opportunities and a better quality of life. And here's the thing, the wage gap between Black and white workers is a whopping $220 billion annually. I know we all have family members that would like a slice of that $220 billion. Well, in this video, using the McKinsey code, the economic state of Black America, I'm going to explain what is causing the $220 billion wage gap so that we have the information, so that more Black Americans can get their share, and so that the U.S. economy can benefit as a whole. Now, I know, many are thinking, dang, Black people are being paid unfairly compared to their white counterparts, and it amounts to $220 billion? Well, not quite. The majority of the $220 billion wage gap is due to occupational representation. It may be hard to hear, but Black workers are concentrated in lower wage jobs and underrepresented in higher paying occupations. Another factor to this wage gap is that Black workers are paid less than white workers within the same occupation, especially in leadership and managerial roles. So we have two factors. One, we are highly concentrated in lower paying jobs and not represented enough in higher paying jobs. Two, Black workers are paid less on average within the same occupational categories. Let's dive into this underrepresentation. 43% of Black workers earn less than $30,000 a year. That's almost half of Black workers. Making an intentional change of upgrading the low-wage jobs that Black workers disproportionately hold is key to closing the wage gap. And I don't want people to be sad about this, although the stats are alarming. This represents a huge opportunity to not only bring 2 million people into the middle class, but to boost the U.S. economy as a whole. Let's take a look at the jobs that Black workers are concentrated in. These jobs are often not fast growing, meaning that when you go and try to look for another job, it is often difficult to get hired. These jobs are also in low wage industries, meaning low pay. And here's the key part. These jobs have lower opportunity for advancement, meaning that as the years go by, your salary is not increasing at the rate of inflation, at the rate of cost of living, and your salary just isn't increasing. Let's take a look at the jobs where our low representation is hurting us the most in pay and limiting quality of life. So, representation gap. We aren't even in these roles at all. We aren't represented properly. Within the occupation wage gap, we're in the roles, but we aren't being paid the same as our counterparts. And if you look over here, this is the dollar impact to this wage gap. For each of these categories, it's showing the dollar impact. So if we look at the first one, managers, other managers, right? 61% of the gap is because we aren't in these roles. That makes up 61% of that $18 billion. 39% that's contributing to the 18 billion is the fact that we're in the roles, but we're not paid equally to our counterparts in the same job categories. And you can see here, physicians, wow, 72% is because we're not represented. We're not in these categories. 28%, we're in it, but we're not being paid equally. We're not being paid equally. That makes up the 12 billion. Wow, software developers, 79% is due to the lack of representation. Lawyers, judges, and magistrates, 75% is due to representation. We're not being represented enough in these roles. That makes a difference when our children are going to court and that representation is not there. This is surprising. Elementary and middle school teachers, 84% is due to representation. We're not represented enough in the elementary and middle school teacher roles, and 16% is due to unequal pay. And you can see the rest as we go down. The majority of this wage gap is due to representation. Yes, we do see that unequal pay plays a role, but we see a greater role is the representation. If we have low representation in higher wage jobs, where do we have our high concentration in? If you guess lower wage jobs, that's exactly it. Let's take a look at Exhibit 2. It's showing the concentration of jobs. It's showing how we are concentrated in lower paying occupations, right? And look here, Black share of the U.S. labor force is 13%. So that plays a key role in what we're looking at here. 13% of the labor force. If we look down here, this is the average annual wage in the thousands. And this over here represents Black share of the workforce in each occupation. And they're representing these in a percentage, okay? So these numbers here represent a percentage. So we see here nursing assistants. About 37% of nursing assistants are Black. We represent a large portion of nursing assistants because we're only 13% of the work share, but we're representing 37% of nursing assistants. And that's a great thing because we are in service roles and we're helping and we're healing people. But let's take a look down here, $20,000 per year. This is what I'm talking about in terms of the over-representation in low-wage jobs. Security guards, 33% of the workforce, around the same $25,000 per year. This is what's causing the wealth gap in terms of representation, over-representation. And you can see personal care aides, cashiers, look at all this, cashiers, laborers, janitors, cooks, material movers, customer service representatives, all concentrated, highly concentrated, because this is the dotted line. This is where our share is in the labor force. We're above that, right? We're above that in these lower paying jobs. Now, as we get over to the higher salaries, you can see that we start coming down closer below this line, meaning that we are underrepresented in the higher paying jobs. Let's take a look here. Managers, we're at like 7%, but they get paid a good amount of money, $60,000, right? So if we can get that up, if we can get that percentage higher, then we're making more money. Lawyers, judges, and magistrates, right? Black people represented about 6% of that workforce. And look how much they get paid. They're almost getting paid six figures, $90,000 per year. But we're only representing that small amount. Software developers are even less. Public and private executives, we're getting below the 5%. Physicians, high salary, but we're only represented 6% of us, right? So you can see that we are not represented as much as we start coming over to the right side. We are highly represented as we go to the left side. And here's the thing about physicians. People feel comfortable when they see someone that looks like them. So when you have a physician that looks like you, you feel more at ease, you feel comfortable. So that representation is key. Black physicians may have more familiarity with Black clients, have a better communication style, right? Because of that familiarity. And that's important. The same thing goes for lawyers and judges. The good thing about this article is it shows you why are we concentrated in these lower wage jobs. It highlights the path to higher paying jobs, right? But then it shows obstacles that we face along the way to those higher paying jobs. What are the obstacles that are getting in the way of us going the path of the higher paying jobs? That's what I'm going to talk about. Let's look specifically at the pipeline for lawyers. Pipeline for lawyers. The data shows a drop-off at every stage that is larger for Black students than for their white peers. The data is actually much steeper at the stage of applying to law school and enrolling. Drop-off. So we're applying, but not enrolling. We drop off. It could be that we're not completing the application, or if we do complete the application, we don't enroll. If the attrition rates for Black students could be leveled to white peers, we would have thousands of Black students coming in, becoming lawyers. If our attrition rates matched our peers. And as I mentioned, this isn't just increasing the income, this is creating wider benefits regarding equality of the law over time. Similarly, only 5% of US physicians are Black. What are the obstacles here? The research from McKinsey Co., they show the biggest fall off coming in the choice of college majors. Fewer Black students choose majors that would put them on the path of becoming a physician. So it's the majors in this point. Another thing that's surprising though is that representation is also lagging with public school teachers. I'm surprised about that one. And what makes that gap bigger is when thousands of candidates don't go all the way through the education pipeline to join the workforce. What do I mean by that? Well, the drop-off when it comes to public school teachers happens At the point of getting education, training, and certifications, you see it fall off. When it's time to get the training and the certifications, you see it fall off. The U.S. Department of Education data indicates that just 4% of recent graduates that are certified to teach are Black. So you can see the obstacle is the certification piece. If only 4% of recent graduates that are certified to teach are Black. Another thing that's important in terms of the representation is Black students seeing a Black face as their teacher. Studies have shown that representation in the teacher profession improves long-term educational achievement for students. When they see someone that looks like them, they have a higher chance of achieving. Not only affects our income, but it impacts the achievement of the young people that are coming up, that are going to make decisions about what they're going to be when they grow up and what type of decisions they're going to make. It all actually impacts the wage gap. So you see, our attrition rates are much higher. We're applying for programs that allow for higher income, but not enrolling when it comes to that attrition rate. We are teachers, but not many of us are getting that continued education to become certified. Now let's look at the managerial jobs. The data shows that some managerial jobs offer multiple ways to access a manager job. But Black workers do have limited access to established business networks, okay? And also limited access to formal internship programs. I can even say for me, when I was in college, I was like, where are all the internships? I don't hear about any of them. I don't see them marketed. Like, where are they? You have to be in the inner circles and being very proactive to find them. So I could see how the access and the advertising for certain internships and business networks is more limited when it comes to Black students. But here's the thing. The data shows that when Black workers do get into these business networks and these internships, that it's harder for them to advance organically from entry level to a managerial job. One of the reasons for that in terms of going from entry level to manager is the lack of sponsorship and allyship. A recent study found that of the 50 largest U.S. firms listed on the S&P 500, there were 279 top executives listed in their proxy statement. And guess how many of those 279 top executives were Black? 5. This is what we're talking about in terms of moving to the top level jobs, the managerial jobs, the upper management, the executive level jobs. The allyship, the sponsorships play a role in that Black workers don't have the same sponsorships and allyships. Let's be intentional about finding allies and mentors that can champion our names. And for our white peers, be intentional about forming allyships and sponsorships with Black workers that you see excelling, that you see have the skills and desire to move up. So we talked about the underrepresentation in high-paying jobs, and we talked about some of the obstacles that lead to the underrepresentation in higher-paying jobs. How do we improve this? Improve our attrition rates that lead to higher-paying jobs by applying for higher education and enrolling. Another thing, employers can expand where and how they recruit, eliminating biases in hiring. You can offer more paid internships and apprenticeships to Black students. You can examine the attrition rates and take a look at the workplace environment and see if the workplace environment has anything to do with attrition rates in terms of a drop-off from going for a managerial role. Many Black workers face day-to-day discrimination and scrutiny that make promotions more difficult to achieve. So examine that workplace experience. And this increases the U.S. economy as a whole because it increases the GDP, having more workers with more purchasing power because they have more disposable income. I'm not just making this information up. A McKinsey survey found a 27 percentage point gap between Black and white employees who report feeling accepted at work. This is something that can be changed. This is something where the dynamic can be changed that can impact the greater good. Many companies are doing great things out there by establishing formal mentorship and sponsorship programs. So these are things that more companies can participate in as well to make that change. Now, we can't get rid of this next thing. Education has always been the pathway to middle class. So continuing to attain for higher education, right? But let's talk about STEM. STEM degrees are required for most fast-growing careers. When you see the careers that are fast-growing, oftentimes they are STEM related. But currently, only 6% of engineering and computer science students are Black. We have great organizations out there like National Society of Black Engineers and Black Girls Code that aim to change these numbers as they engage young people. Let's be honest. Black workers are the backbone of this nation's caregivers and frontline workers. As these workers start to age, as they start to get older and they're still in these roles, there's a responsibility to look at the quality of these roles. Companies can look at the wage that's paid to essential workers, giving them more predictable hours, improving workplace safety, and improving the benefits such as sick leave and other benefits that can increase the quality of the job. And this next one is so important. About 6.7 million Black workers, that's 42% of the Black labor force, currently hold jobs that could be disrupted, not in 30 years, but by 2030. Increased automation is going to require less of a need for certain workers, mainly workers in these 4 categories: cashiers, janitors, cooks, and retail salespeople. Many people who hold these jobs will need education or on-the-job training to develop new skills. So if you don't improve those skills, if you don't get that education, you may not be seen as valuable for your current position based on the future of work. I gave several different examples of how we can improve this gap, this wage gap, due to us being highly concentrated in lower wage jobs and not represented enough in higher paying jobs. And we can see the obstacles to the higher paying jobs and how we can overcome them, not just for ourselves, but for our counterparts as well as employers. If we take heed to those things, we can bring 2 million people into the middle class. With that, share this video with someone that you think could benefit from understanding the wage gap and the roles that we all play in closing it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in another video.